What is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Locked Up with David Matlock, the safe space for the sports nerd. And today we will be talking about my Atlanta Hawks and what I really have liked from the season and a huge question I have going forward for the team. Atlanta Hawks are currently sitting at 9-9 in the Eastern Conference. They're seventh in the East. They're first in the Southeast Division, but that doesn't really matter based on how the conference structure works. But they have been a winner of 4 of their last 5. They've been on a pretty good upswing after kind of having a bit of a struggle after starting really well. So it's been pits and valleys for this team, which is to be expected. But there are a lot of things to be happy about, and of course there are a lot of things that I was worried that would happen, and they ended up happening. So what I like, Trae Young. Trae Young had a very rough stretch. People gave him a hard time. They were like, "What's wrong with Trae Young? Is it what Steve Nash said about him not playing real basketball?" No, that's dumb. That does not make any sense. Like, granted, it probably would hurt his feelings a little bit, but they went and got James Harden. So it really, like, Steve Nash talking about real basketball is so irrelevant to that situation. There's also people saying, "Oh, John Collins is ruining the chemistry in the locker room by going at Trae Young." I don't know. They're still boys. Like, also, Trae Young, the offense being too dependent on Trae Young has been a problem for this team in the past. And honestly, like, I feel like they're probably on the same page with that. And the fact that they were able to bring it out to the light and discuss it, it's not a problem at all. The real problem was Trae Young had an injured wrist that he injured versus the Charlotte Hornets, and it was obvious that he was hurt because he only had 7 points in that game, and he actually had x-rays on that wrist, and you could see there was wrappings on his wrist. So obviously Trae Young was not feeling himself, but over the last 5, he's averaged 33 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 46% from the field, and he shot 62 free throw attempts in 5 games. Trae Young is back, baby. That's right. Like, Trae Young, oh, he's so good, man. Like, I'm so glad we have a playmaker on this team. And when he's healthy, it is so dangerous. Like, granted, the defense, we knew the defense wasn't going to be the biggest thing. Like, that's something we're always going to talk about. But he has looked spectacular. And I definitely think he's going to get another All-Star nod. Who knows if he gets an All-Pro team selection this year. Another thing that I like, Clint Capela. Clint Capela has played tremendous basketball. If you remember, we traded for Clint Capela from the Houston Rockets in a 14 deal that included Minnesota, Golden State, Houston, and of course Atlanta. And we sent Evan Turner, a 2024 second rounder, a 2020 first rounder, and we ended up getting Alexei Pokusevski. Pokusevski is the pick that matriculated into that the Thunder eventually had, and Pokusevski is a talented guy, but it's definitely no Clint Capela. That is for sure. We ended up having to waive Chandler Parsons. It was a lot. A lot of it was salary moving around. It wasn't necessarily a player for player. That's why there were so many guys involved. But we got a steal. That is for damn sure. 5 years, $80 million. He is the truth. Like, he is the center we've been looking for. 14 points. He leads the league in rebounds. He had a triple-double with 10 blocks. I mean, that's like the first time since Dikembe Mutombo that we've had that on an Atlanta Hawks team. He has played spectacular basketball. The only question is he going to stay healthy? That's the only question I have, and it's not because I'm a doom and gloom kind of guy. It's just we got to be realistic. Every year he's had something come in, and I've said he's a ticking time bomb, but let's just hope the good times last because he is playing great basketball. Another thing I like, DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is averaging 17.7 points per game, and he has looked absolutely amazing over the last 5 games. He's averaging 22 points a game over his last 5, shooting 55% from the field, 35% from 3, 38% for the season. He's taking the next step. He is definitely taking the next step, and I think that the doubts and the questions that were on DeAndre Hunter coming into the draft, a lot of his, he has a high floor, but what's his ceiling? Like, what's DeAndre Hunter going to be able to do at an NBA level besides what he can already do at a college level? We'll be able to defend at a high level. And he struggled defensively last year. It's a fair criticism, but he stepped it up. 100% he stepped it up. And his shot creation ability has definitely stepped up. If you watch the Nets game the Hawks' next game recently that we lost in overtime, he was taking KD to the hoop. He was getting shots over Kevin Durant. His elbow jumper game is so crisp already, and you see echoes. I don't want to hype up a guy too much, but you see echoes of a Kawhi Leonard in him. You see echoes of Malcolm Brogdon, and just so fundamental and that team oriented type of player that UVA churns out. And you're really got to be excited for the guy just looking at the amount of progress he's made. Another thing that I like, the Hawks are ninth overall in points allowed on defense. I can't believe I just said that. Like, we are not a terrible defensive team. Granted, we've played against some teams that the scores, how they swung, like the Cleveland Cavaliers game, the Knicks games, like those are already low scoring teams. So that stat may not necessarily be as realistic as we would like, but the defense definitely looks better. And we are 12th in the league in points scored a game. That's a huge fall off from the fourth overall offense we were, but we have a lot of injuries. And that takes me to things that I don't like. So, what I don't like is the amount of money we spent on guys who have not played much basketball. I was excited about these signings. Danilo Gallinari, we should have expected. We did expect this, that he was going to be hurt. That's just Danilo. He's always been like that. He's been playing more, and like we need that veteran presence. But 3 years for $61.5 million is really going to bite us in the butt. Bogdanovich has, I believe it's a knee avulsion fracture. Like, I don't even know what that is, but it sounds bad, and he's going to be out for a while. Rondo, I don't know if Rondo may be feeling it that night. He's like, oh, I'll play, or he's like, nah, I'm gonna just sit this one out. And you're just kind of like, all right, well, I guess it's Rondo. We paid him $7.5 million a year, so we're just gonna have to deal with it at this point. And then you look at Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn hasn't even played yet. Okongwu's just not playing. Trae and Capela missed some time, and I think Capela's a ticking time bomb. So it's like the questions we have, it's already just kind of making me nervous in terms of how available are guys going to be, and how is that going to affect our record in the regular season? Are they going to be available for the playoffs? Like, what's the move? Like, what do we do going forward with a team that's very injury prone? And I think the amount of money we've poured into the vets, while necessary, I think it was necessary, especially if you were trying to appease Trae Young to show that you're ready to win now. It limits our options. And that brings me to my biggest thing I don't like. It's the biggest question of the Hawks organization. What happens with John Collins? John Collins is my favorite player on the Atlanta Hawks. I have a John Collins jersey. He was the first draft pick that I saw that I was excited about after getting guys like John Jenkins. We got like just some French guy. I don't even remember his name. Like, there are just so many draft picks the Hawks have had over the years that you're just like, eh. Like, Dennis Schroeder was exciting, and then we didn't keep him. Then we got Trae Young, and then we get DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. But it started with John Collins. Like, John Collins is having a good year. John Collins is on 30 minutes a game, mind you, 30 minutes a game, 16 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 1.2 blocks per game on 40% three-point shooting percentage. Yes, 40% from behind the three-point arc, and a 53% field goal percentage. Yes, 53%. Yeah, 53 is really good for a four, especially a stretch four. Like, that's really good numbers. The problem is touches. That's definitely the biggest thing. Like, but right now, John Collins' trade value is super high. And this is a guy who wants a max contract. Do we give him the max contract? Like, I don't know if John Collins is worth the max, because the priority, without a doubt, is Trae Young. You make sure that money is there for Trae Young. All right, and going forward, do you think that John Collins is a guy that you'd be comfortable giving max money to get you a championship? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about it. And it's not even to be a knock against John Collins, but it's just to say we can't go big game hunting if we use all our bullets too early in the game. Like, I mean, if we spend all of our money, we spent 61.5 on Danilo, 72 mil on Bogdanovich, $15 million on Rondo. That's over 2 years. And then we've got Chris Dunn. Tony Snell's an expiring contract, and so once Snell's contract expires, we'll have a lot more cap space. But still, like that cap space, that automatically is about probably like $35 to $40 million taken out of the cap space because that is going to Trae Young. Like that has to be Trae Young's money. Like it is of the utmost importance because we have a lot more wiggle room with DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. So there's not necessarily as much of an urgency to make sure that those guys are paid because Gallinari and Rondo's contracts will have expired by then. Clint Capela will be kind of in the last couple of years of his contract. So we'll still have some wiggle room with Trae, Capela, DeAndre, Cam Reddish. Like those guys will be fine. Herter and Collins, on the other hand, I don't know if we give them what do you justify giving them that money for? Which is why I think maybe trading them is the best option to maximize the value. And I like Kevin Herter too. But I think as a fan base, we put a lot of unnecessary expectation on Kevin Herter. I definitely got super excited and I was like, oh, next Klay Thompson. We're going to have Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. We're going to be the Warriors of the East. But it's like, that's just not going to happen, man. Like, you can't put that expectation on a guy like to be like Klay Thompson's a Hall of Fame caliber player. And like, you just can't have that expectation on a guy like Kevin Herter, who is a 12 points a game, solid 3-point shooting, good secondary facilitator type of player. You can win championships with a guy like Kevin Herter on your roster. He can play good enough defense. Like the guy, he's a solid player. But what if we packaged Herter and Collins to get somebody like a Bradley Beal? So the Washington Wizards, I think, would be probably the most ideal trade partner for us to give John Collins, in my opinion, I think. Because, I mean, if you want to talk about a team that would like to get John Collins, you're thinking about like the Raptors pairing up with Pascal Siakam. But for us and for the Wizards, I think this could be a potentially very beneficial trade. So the biggest need that the Wizards have is they have no big depth whatsoever. You have Thomas Bryant, who just tore his MCL. Your starting center is Robin Lopez. Mo Wagner is like one of your backups. I don't even know the name of the other guy that they have on their team. So they need a big in the worst kind of way. That's why they keep losing, is because they can't play a lick of defense. They can't rebound. They get out-rebounded every time. They can put 120 on you because they have some of the best shooting in the league with Davis Bertans, Bradley Beal. Even Avdia is a good shooter. They've got guys who can load up the stat sheet, but they can't defend a lick. And John Collins, he isn't a defensive anchor, which would be the biggest question mark. But he adds depth. If you pair him with the Robin Lopez, then Robin Lopez looks like, not a bad option when you're pairing him with John Collins. But if he's the only guy guarding the paint, I mean, this is not a knock on Robin Lopez. Like Robin Lopez he's been around the league for a while. He's an experienced guy, but he's been around the league for a while. He's an old guy. Like you can't have Robin Lopez as your starting center moving forward. And we can trade picks. We can get Bradley Beal and Trae Young. Come on, let's make this happen. Get Bradley Beal and Trae Young. That would be amazing basketball. Granted, our defense would be slipping, but hopefully Okongwu would have to show out. But that's a problem for another time. The thing is, we have to maximize value of Collins, because if we wait towards the end of the season, we can wait to see somebody give a qualifying offer. And if someone gives a qualifying offer, then his value is kind of shown. It's kind of like we would show our cards at that point, because if someone says, if we give him an offer and then someone gives him the qualifying offer, they're like, oh, I see how much you value him. This is how much I'm going to value him, just a little bit more than you. But with the air of mystery, especially in the middle of the season, when stars are putting pressure on their team to say, you need to go get me some help right now, Bradley Beal definitely does not want to be on that team much longer. Like, he's a professional. He's not going to say it, but I'll say it for him. He doesn't want to be on that team any longer. Like, he knows that. You watch his reaction to losing to John Wall. That man is tired of putting up 40 a game and losing. And it's a tragedy to watch it happen in action. But I think Bradley Beal in a package including John Collins, Kevin Herter, and maybe a pick, and we get maybe like a second rounder or a first round pick or something like that. I don't know if they would not give us a first rounder, but if maybe a second rounder later on down the line, I could see that being a beneficial trade for them and definitely a beneficial one for us. And then you look at another team, the Pelicans. They're off to a 6-11 start. I think they just recently won a game tonight, but the Pelicans have no floor spacing. They have no floor spacing at all. And they're trying to get rid of Lonzo Ball and JJ Redick. Why they're trying to get rid of JJ Redick when floor spacing is their biggest problem, I don't understand. You're going to have to explain that to me. But it makes sense to move on from Lonzo Ball because they're trying to give Nickeil Alexander-Walker playtime. And Lonzo's just not. He's a bust. I love Lonzo. He's a great fundamental basketball player. He plays on both sides well, but he is a bust. He's a bust in the pervert. You don't use a second overall pick on a guy like Lonzo Ball and expect him to get freaking 9 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. Like, you don't expect that from a number 2 overall pick. No, you don't. And I love Lonzo, but if we could get Lonzo for a cheap deal, if we sent them John Collins and then we get Lonzo, maybe JJ Redick, Jackson Hayes. If we got Jackson Hayes, that would be center depth that we could very much use and that would be very much welcome on our team, because I don't think Bruno Fernando is going to be a long-term solution, and I don't know about Onyeka Okongwu yet. Like, I mean, why would you go get a center after using a draft pick on a 4 or 5, like a 4/5? Depth, that's why, and also trade assets. But I think if you could get those guys and you can move on from John Collins and get picks, if we could get picks from the Pelicans, that would also be very beneficial for us. And it's not because we need picks. We definitely do not need picks, that is for sure. But again, it's assets, and you need assets, especially in a league where the volatility of having to be able to always have a deck of cards to be able to throw down on the table when a trade is potential, like when there's potentially a trade, is quite important in today's NBA. So what I like, the Hawks are blossoming, and it's great to watch young players grow into much more productive NBA guys so that they can help produce an NBA society. But putting that aside, it is really fun to watch them play. I just love watching these guys. But I'm just worried about how healthy we can stay, how effective the coaching is going to be down the line, like how well is the system going to be managed, how well are guys going to be managed when wins are going to be a little bit more necessary, when we don't necessarily have the adequate personnel available. And then I don't like what's probably going to happen with John Collins. I don't see John Collins still being on this team next year. I just don't see it happening. And it's not because I don't want him to be there, but if you got to maximize the value of John Collins. So it's disappointing, but I think it's for the better. It's for the better of both parties, because John Collins is a guy who he's going to be making all-star teams in his future. He's a 20-10 guy. He is a very talented offensive player, and he's a very electric guy, and I really would like to see him blossom, and I just think that it would work for both parties if we moved on. All right, that's been talking about the Hawks. Great to be back. Moved down into my new studio in Georgia, studio being my dining room at home with my folks. Check out the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on this video. The link for our podcast will be down in the bio with my co-host Carlos, and we have a special guest. There will be a new podcast episode being filmed this weekend that will be dropping probably Monday or even Sunday of the coming days. So be on the look for that. And this has been Locked Up with David Matlock. See you guys later. Honestly, you can keep me up your business. You need to